Good morning. Today we will discuss a new concept called de Broglie waves. This was a speculative hypothesis put forward by Louis de Broglie in 1924. We have already seen how modern physics emerged in the beginning of the 20th century, and we have seen that there were some revolutionary ideas put forward by quantum theory, like all electromagnetic wave shows matter properties and also wave properties. For example, we came to know that all the electromagnetic waves and light are made of small packages of energy like quanta or photon, and they behave like particles. So de Broglie said that since all these electromagnetic radiations shows these two nature, that is wave nature as shown by reflection, refraction, interference and diffraction, and they also show particle nature as seen from photoelectric effect and Compton effect. What is photoelectric effect? It's the effect where when light falls on metal surfaces, they emit electrons, which means light, which is an electromagnetic radiation, can kick out electrons or they behave like particles. And this effect can be explained only by considering these electromagnetic radiations as particles or photons. Now, we also saw Compton effect. In Compton effect, when high energy photons or quanta are incident on metal surface or matter, the scattered photon have wavelength larger than the incident photon, or they also kick away a electron. So this shows that the electromagnetic radiation can behave like particle. And earlier we always know that light shows the phenomenon of reflection, refraction, interference and diffraction, which are all properties of waves. So electromagnetic radiation has two nature. Now de Broglie thought in a different way now. Since nature loves symmetry, for example, if we have a bridge and a person can cross the bridge to one side, the person on the other side should be able to cross the bridge to the other side as well, right? So every time nature will show symmetry. So if waves can show particle nature, then particles will be able to show wave nature as well. Physics is the study of matter and radiation. And we have found that radiation has dual nature, two nature, wave nature and particle nature. Therefore, matter also must have dual nature, that is wave nature and particle nature. That was the explanation of de Broglie waves. So in 1924, Louis de Broglie proposed a new speculative hypothesis. What is meant by speculative? Speculative means it was a intelligent thinking but not based on any experiments. So he made a speculative hypothesis that electrons and other particles of matter can behave like waves. These waves are called de Broglie matter waves. Can you think of matter behaving like a wave? Like the chair, like the table, we ourselves, we are all matter, right? And we behaving like waves. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that a table is a kind of wave? It's very hard to imagine, right? But since radiation, which is a wave, shows particle nature, he felt that the matter must also show, in addition to particle nature, wave nature. Now, when he put forward this idea, it was not readily accepted by the scientific world because it's just a speculation, it has no experimental basis. But later, in 1927, it was found true by Davison and Germer. So Davison and Germer conducted an experiment, and in that experiment, they found that very tiny particles or particles having very low mass like electrons, which can also travel at very high speed, shows wave nature. We definitely know that electron is a particle. It has a particular mass. It's a matter. And Davison and Germer in their experiment showed that electrons show diffraction, which is a characteristic property of waves. So it was experimentally proved. So what Louis de Broglie suggested through a speculative hypothesis was experimentally proved by Davison and Germer through their experiment, and at the same time independently by J.P. Thomson. And both Davison and Germer and Thomson received Nobel Prize in 1937 for this experimental verification of de Broglie matter waves. So Thomson, J.P. Thomson is the son of J.J. Thomson. Do you know who is J.J. Thomson? Who is J.J. Thomson? What is his famous discovery? J.J. Thomson was the scientist who discovered electrons. So J.P. Thomson is his son. So they got the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1937 because they experimentally verified the existence of de Broglie matter waves. Now let us see how through an equation the matter properties, that is mass or momentum, and the wave property like wavelength is connected. Do you remember when we discussed the properties of photons? We said that photons have momentum, and their momentum P is equal to energy by C, where E is the energy of a photon and C is the speed of light or speed of photon in free space or vacuum. And what is energy E? E is equal to hf, where h is Planck's constant having value 6.63 into 10 raised to minus 34. And C is the speed of light in vacuum, which is 3 into 10 raised to 8 meter per second. So the momentum of a photon P is equal to E by C. And we know that E for any photon E is equal to H times F, where F is the frequency. Or this is equal to hc by lambda, because frequency is velocity divided by wavelength. So if we substitute instead of E, hf and hc by lambda, we will get P is equal to hf by C or hc by lambda by C. C gets cancelled, or h by lambda. Or you can write lambda, if you take to the other side, P comes down. So lambda is equal to h by P. So here a characteristic property of mass, a property of particle, which is mass, and a characteristic property of wave, that is wavelength, is connected. So lambda is equal to h by mv. Now also dimensionally, we can see that h by mv have the dimension of length, that is meters. Let us see how. H is Planck's constant, right? So from here you can tell H is equal to E by F. E is energy having unit joules, and by F, frequency is per second. So H will have a unit joules second. Mass has the unit kilogram, and velocity have the unit mass per second. So you have here per second, so it goes up joule second square by kilogram times meter. So joules is also the unit of work. Work means force times distance. So they have written the unit joules as Newton times meter. So Newton meter second square by kilogram meter. So meter can be cancelled. So again Newton, which is force. Force is mass into acceleration, right? So Newton is written as kilogram, which is mass, into acceleration. Acceleration will be again meter per second square. So kilogram meter per second square is Newton. Then you have second square and then another kilogram in the denominator. This meter gets cancelled. So here second square get cancelled, kilograms gets cancelled. So what remains is meter. So this equation that lambda is equal to h by mv or lambda is equal to h by p, which is called de Broglie equation, is dimensionally right. So this uh, h by mv eventually will have the dimension of length, that is wavelength. So this is how de Broglie speculation that all matter also will have wave property is experimentally proved, and also by equation they are connected, the wave property and matter property. Is this clear to you? De Broglie waves, what are de Broglie matter waves? Is this clear to you?
Yes.
Hasina, can you tell me what are de Broglie matter waves?
Mm, the electromagnetic radiation
Mhm.
and nature.
What are de Broglie matter waves? What are called de Broglie matter waves? Okay, who else can tell me what are de Broglie matter waves?
Teacher, can I say?
Yes.
Um, Louis de Broglie proposed a new speculative hypothesis that electrons and other particles of matter can behave like waves. These waves are called de Broglie matter waves.
Matter waves, right. That is true. And how was it, who experimentally verified that de Broglie matter waves exist? Who experimentally verified?
Davison and Germer experiment.
uh, Davison and Germer experimentally verified that de Broglie matter waves exist. Okay, now can you tell an equation connecting the wavelength and mass of a particle? Can you tell an equation connecting wavelength and mass of the particle? Who can tell me an equation connecting the wavelength and mass? Lambda is equal to h by mv. Lambda is the wavelength, m is the mass. So this is an equation that connects mass and wavelength of a particle. Now let us see uh, the case of an electron. What is the mass of an electron? Mass of an electron will be 9.1 into 10 raised to minus 31 kilogram. Or you can tell 10 into 10 raised to minus 31, approximately 10 raised to 30. Now the velocity of an electron can be up to 10 raised to 6, suppose. So 10 raised to 6. So lambda is equal to h by mv, right? So 10 raised to minus 30 times 10 raised to 6 will give you 10 raised to minus 24. Now what is h? H is 6.63 into 10 raised to minus 36. So if you cancel that, it will come around 10 raised to minus 12 maybe. So very few, or 10 few number times 10 raised to minus 10 even, because we didn't consider the numbers, right? So it will be around the wavelength of an electron. If it is moving very fast, comparable to that of light, it can be nearly Armstrong. And we have experimental techniques to determine that length, that wavelength. So that is how Davison and Germer could identify electrons' wave property. Now, if we consider our mass, suppose an average person, his mass is say 50 kilogram, or maybe let us consider a small baby having mass 10 kilogram. And what will be the velocity, maximum velocity, even if the child is moving in a flight, can be maximum, or we can consider the child is moving with a velocity of 100 meters square. So what comes in the denominator? 10 times 100, it will be 1000, 10 raised to 3, right? And here h is 3 into 10 raised to 6.63 into 10 raised to minus 34. So into 10 raised to minus 3. So it will be 10 raised to minus 37. So there is no technique by which we can identify that small length, 10 raised to minus 36 meter. It is not possible to find out that much small length, or that is why the matter which we see around us do not manifest its wave nature much, because the wavelength around, attached with most of the matter which have an appreciable mass and which cannot move comparable to that of light and all, they do not show much wave nature, only because we cannot measure their wavelength and we cannot see with the existing experiment techniques their wavelength. That is why it's not observable for us. But when it comes to very small particles and which can move with very high velocity, they can be seen. Is it clear now? Do you have any doubt?
No, teacher.
Okay. Now, another important discovery or revolutionary discovery during the same time is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So let us see what is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Now we say that a particle shows wave nature and a wave shows particle nature. But Heisenberg said that the position and momentum of a particle along a particular direction cannot be determined accurately simultaneously, because when we consider the case of an electron in an atom, the electron, we can tell that it's in its orbits, right? So it will be rotating in its orbit. So it can be at any position. Now, when we definitely, accurately tell the electron is at this position, we cannot be accurate about its momentum. Okay, we cannot accurately tell its velocity is this, its mass is there. It's not possible. Now, if you can definitely tell the mass and velocity, that is momentum of a electron, then we cannot tell exactly where the electron is. It's moving. So you cannot tell where exactly, accurately, that is, it will be in this region. That's what you can tell. So it's not possible. So it's a negative statement. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle is a negative statement which states that the position and momentum of a particle along a particular direction cannot be determined accurately simultaneously. Simultaneously means at the same time. At one point, maybe you can accurately tell its position, then there is uncertainty and you are not sure what will be its momentum. Now, at one point of time, you are able to tell exactly its momentum, then you are not sure about its exact position. There is an uncertainty in position. And he said that if delta x shows the uncertainty in position, which means the limit within which you can tell that it's between this place, anywhere within here. So that uncertainty in position, that small distance between which that particle lies, that is delta x, and delta p represents the small uncertainty in momentum. Okay, its momentum can be maybe this value to this value, somewhere in between. So that is the uncertainty in momentum. So the product of uncertainty in position and the uncertainty in momentum is greater than or equal to h by 4 pi. So the least uncertainty is h by 4 pi. H again is Planck's constant, having a value 6.63 into 10 raised to minus 34. So delta x times delta p is greater than equal to h by 4 pi. Now, if the uncertainty's position is high, the uncertainty in momentum will be low. Similarly, if the uncertainty in momentum is high, the uncertainty in position will be low. So if more uncertainty is there in one quantity, the other will be more accurate, means less uncertain. We can be more sure of the other quantity. Now again, h by 4 pi and h by 2 pi usually comes in many situations. So h by 2 pi is sometimes expressed by h bar. H bar, you can see here h with a cut on its top. So this is called h bar. So h by 2 pi is a quantity which repeats itself at many places in physics. So h by 2 pi is sometimes expressed as h bar. It is called reduced Planck's constant. So sometimes you may see the uncertainty principle as delta P, delta X is greater than or equal to half of h bar, where h bar is a reduced Planck's constant and its value is equal to h by 2 pi. So for calculations, you can use this value and don't get worried if you see this. Delta P, delta X is greater than or equal to half h cross or h bar anywhere. Both means the same. Okay. Now, he said this uncertainty in case of position and momentum. And he later found that the same uncertainty is found when you try to find the time interval where the electron or the small particle, particular particle exists, and also the energy of the particle. So these ideas are only for particles which are extremely small. The mass is very small and they can travel with very high velocity. Only in such microscopic particles these properties are seen, not with massive particles that we see around us. So the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle holds for energy and time also. We cannot determine accurately and simultaneously the energy and time of a particle. For example, if you have a meson particle and all, it's very tiny, it's almost massless, and it has very small lifetime. So for such particles, the energy of the particle and the time interval during which it exists cannot be accurately determined simultaneously. If you try to find out the time interval in which it exists accurately, you are not sure about the energy what it possesses. Now, if you are trying to express its energy, what is the energy possessed by this particle accurately, you won't be sure about its time or lifetime. So energy and time also cannot be determined accurately and simultaneously. And so the relation is delta E, which is the uncertainty in energy. Delta T is the uncertainty in its time interval or the lifetime of very tiny particles, which has very low lifetime. Then delta E delta T is greater than or equal to half H cross or H bar. Is this clear to you, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle? Is this clear to you?
Yes, teacher.
Okay.